Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Kashmira George, Senior Conference Producer at Corinium. Today, we'll be going into some of the most pressing issues within cybersecurity in the financial services sector, such as AI, the complexities of cloud security, as well as fostering a strong security culture that drives innovation and resilience. With me, I have a special guest, Tobias Klingel. He is the head of information security at Aspire. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Tobias.
Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So now for our audience at home, would you mind introducing yourself and giving them a little bit of backstory on your expertise?
Happy to do so. So I work for the last 3.5 years for a company called Aspire. We do B2B finance, and I really do from A to C everything in terms of security. So I usually share between awareness training and zero trust and everything in between from regulatory compliance, policies, procedures, anything you can imagine. My background, I was actually starting off my career in the cybersecurity of self-driving train solutions. And then I shifted over the years more towards the financial service industry where I'm working in since many, many years now.
Wow, that's a very diverse portfolio that you have. And, just going to dive right into some of the questions, because you have such a big expertise. We are looking at some of the integrations of AI in cybersecurity and how that has changed security culture in financial services. Could you expand a little bit more on how you're seeing that happen?
Yeah, I think the recent few years, the advancement and the changes in AI, and I think almost in all industry, not only in the financial industry, I think almost all industries are sort of like touched on that in terms of like new tools, new chatbots. It's just vast what change, and I think none of us really can keep up. The computational advancement, scientific breakthroughs. I think one of the most famous papers is the attention is all you need paper. So I think just there's so many things changing, and especially on the cybersecurity side, it's like a huge added benefit to all of these changes. I think like maybe a few examples: real-time threat detection, automation. All of these things were already in a lot of tools integrated, but it becomes way, way better and can just do way more things. More on the financial side and in the financial sector, similarly, tools like fraud detection are just getting way better, detect way more things way earlier, which helps financial institutions not only to detect different kind of frauds, also to detect it way earlier. So you kind of shift a little bit from this reactive to a little bit more proactive on like on a shorter time period. So I think there's a lot of things changing. We don't really know what else will change, but just in terms of the tools and the capabilities we can process and automate things, I think there's quite a lot of things have been changed, and I'm sure will be changing in the near future.
Absolutely. And like you said, and we're kind of in what some would call an AI boom, and this can be very difficult to regulate. So what kind of steps should CISOs take to ensure that AI is used responsibly?
So the first thing I would argue is just see it as another tool. So it's just like another thing. There were like many things in the past. I think maybe cloud is the best example. When sort of like all of the hyperscalers came up, like Amazon, AWS, and Google Cloud, they were also new, and there was a lot of questions in terms of privacy, security. But now these are actually the best solutions, like you potentially can use in terms of security and regulatory compliance. How companies can adapt like the recent changes in AI, I would argue adapt your data governance, make sure you have the right internal guidelines, procedures. You align them with like especially data privacy regulations, for example, GDPR, because all of these AI tools and advancements are based on a lot of different data. So the biggest concern is data. You also need to make sure that these systems you potentially integrate into your infrastructure are constantly audited, monitored, you do pen tests on it. So these are all fairly traditional or like common approaches. So I would argue again, just see it as another tool, adapt what you already do with like the angle of AI and understand the differences, of course. There are definitely differences which were not there before. And maybe finally, as always, train all your employees, make sure they understand what the tools can do and what they cannot do, what the guidelines are, and maybe what they should be careful of.
Absolutely. And, just going into that a little more in depth, another point of contention is old versus new. So where traditional security measures are valued in financial services, how can AI-driven solutions coexist with that while ensuring risk management and compliance is effectively adhered to?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of maybe sort of the technical infrastructure aspect, a lot of things are similar. So also a lot of traditional approaches in terms of securing, you still can adapt like access controls, vulnerability assessments, and software updates, firewalls, monitoring, intrusion detection, and so on. So all of these traditional approaches or protection mechanisms you still can use and it's still applicable. What I would suggest a lot of companies to do is to collaborate between maybe the sort of like traditional teams which have done this in the past and potentially newer formed AI focused teams to collaborate, to understand each other, and then to sort of enhance and secure these new capabilities. It's usually all about training, understanding, especially a lot of these AI systems are almost like a black box for a lot of people. So nobody really knows how they work. This is really important that people understand how they work, what are the limitations, what are the internal guidelines, again on it. So I think this is like one of the main approaches, and potentially again back to this example, what happened when a lot of companies moved into the cloud, similar processes or approaches can be used. Basically, how did we do it in the past from on-premise, moving into the cloud? Now we moved maybe from more traditional automation approaches to AI-driven automation approaches or capabilities.
Right. And, given your work at Aspire, like just adjacent to cloud technology, how do you see the adoption of cloud technology evolving within financial services sector as a whole?
So the funny thing is we're actually sort of like born in the cloud. So almost everything in terms of infrastructure we have relies in the cloud. If it's either one of the big hyperscalers or if it's any kind of SaaS tool we use in our day-to-day. So a lot of the things we are already there. So for us, there's not much of like changes to be done. But there are potentially some kind of smaller systems also we are running, which are potentially not fully in the cloud. At least over time, things change due to very often regulatory needs in certain countries where cloud is still not 100% accepted, and it's very problematic to really run everything in the cloud. I would, and you usually when I have the discussion, like I said, like, hey, cloud services are really high value services. They're really highly regulated. They fulfill very stringent compliance requirements. So all of these cloud solutions, they're most likely way more secure and way more compliant than what you would run on your own infrastructure. Also, I think a lot of regulators more and more sort of are okay with running everything in the cloud, especially nowadays there's like multi-cloud setups where you can distribute your risk, running your systems, different clouds, different locations. So I would argue everyone who has not some portion in the cloud at the moment, there's no need to worry about any kind of like compliance or security considerations. It's actually a huge add-on, and especially maybe also in terms of cost and all of these things, there's a lot of advantages.
And there seems to be a number of pulls and drawbacks that you could expand on when going into the cloud native, I guess, debacle. But in the terms of resilience and building resilience into your cloud security strategies, perhaps you could expand on that as well.
In terms of resilience, you need to understand the difference a little bit with AI. All is kind of similar, but there are unique differences, and same with the cloud, right? I think the most unique difference, what people usually point towards is it's somewhere else controls your data, potentially configuration issues, you expose potentially internal infrastructure publicly. So you really need to make sure that you have capabilities in place to, first of all, from a process perspective, to have the right processes, procedures in place to ensure when you have any changes within your infrastructure that these changes don't reduce your security. So, for example, you run a new piece of infrastructure in the cloud, and you don't want to have it publicly exposed because it's potentially like a database. You need to have from the development of maybe the code, when you have like in any kind of like infrastructure as code, how you bring it into the cloud, and all of these steps from building to deployment are secured, monitored, and even if it's already deployed, if you have very time sensitive or like very small iterations of security monitoring and security audits, that these changes are complying to your internal compliance guidelines. No. So you need to have the right tools in place to detect changes you don't want to have.
Do you find that the tools that are in place are sufficient as a whole in the financial services sector?
It's always a cat and mouse game between attackers and protectors. I think there's really a lot of really amazing tools out there. I believe, at least since the timeline of my career, I would almost argue that security becomes more and more a solved topic, because there's so many solutions, so many great, more and more, it's not completely there yet, but security out of the box. You turn it on, there's already a lot of like access control, system hardening is already in place, which were not maybe in place like 10 years ago. So there's a lot of great tools there. You need to use them well, and you need to have your talent well trained, that they understand, again, like the advantages and the disadvantages, or like the potential downfalls of these systems and how they can break. You need your people to understand these, and then I think there's really good tools to protect your systems nowadays.
There seems to be a number of challenges that financial services as a whole need to overcome. But now looking into 2025, what are the areas that CISOs really need to focus on in the near future?
Maybe again, what we always do, we need to ensure a continuous operation. So we need to, even with all of the changes in AI, rapid threat changes, we need just to ensure things are running smoothly. There's no compromises, like just these sort of like things we always do. So I think this is like maybe one of the key aspects also for 2025. But if we maybe put a little bit like the current changes sort of like as a top priority, I think everything around data and compliance. All of these new chatbots, AI tools we use within organizations or we offer to our customers, these tools only work if there's vast amount of data being shared, analyzed, and processed. So there's a lot of topics around data privacy, regulations, how to adapt to regulations which potentially don't exist yet, really. how to balance really like the advantages of these tools, and also, of course, customers have also a lot of requirements or needs that their data is used responsibly. So how do you balance all of this? And again, like all of these things are usually done with governance training, and yeah, really making sure you understand what's happening and adapt to it.
Absolutely. And there seems to be a number of things that we also need to focus on as a whole in the financial services sector. But as a whole, thank you for your insights onto security culture and AI and how we can posture ourselves for new innovation and resilience in 2025. So once again, thank you to Tobias for taking us on a very remarkable and informative journey on these very informative topics and pressing topics that we need to be discussed. So to our viewers, thank you for listening in and joining this engaging discussion. If you'd like to see more from Tobias, please make sure to catch him at Corinium's CISO FSI Singapore on the 22nd of April at Equarius Hotel, Sentosa. So thank you once again, and it was a pleasure speaking with you today. Looking forward to seeing you at the event.
Thank you very much for the conversation. And yes, I look forward to the event.
Amazing.